My name is Trooper Sarah Diaz, badge number 2847, California Highway Patrol. I have been patrolling the highways of Central California for 14 years, and before you watch this video, before you dismiss what I am about to tell you as fiction or the ramblings of someone who has seen too much, I need you to understand something. I am not crazy. I have received commendations. I have testified in court hundreds of times. I have saved lives, and I have taken statements from dying people on the side of the road. I am trained to observe, to document, to remain calm under pressure. What happened on State Route 58 between Bakersfield and Santa Margarita changed everything I thought I knew about reality itself. Before I continue, if you subscribe and like this video, you will be contributing greatly to the continuation of new stories to come. And I am curious, where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your location in the comments. If you are from California, especially if you have ever driven Route 58 at night, pay very close attention. Have you ever felt like the mile markers were counting wrong? Have you ever lost time on that stretch of highway? Drop a comment because you might understand what I am about to tell you better than most. There is a 47-mile section of State Route 58 between mile marker 104 and mile marker 57 where something happens after midnight. The California Highway Patrol knows about it. The Department of Transportation knows about it. And after what happened on March 3rd, 2024, after I learned what happened to the 7 other troopers who patrolled this section before me, I can no longer remain silent. What I am about to tell you goes against every oath I swore, every regulation I agreed to follow, but people deserve to know the truth. They deserve to know why we lost Trooper Michael Chen in 2019, why Trooper David Kowalski transferred out in 2017 and never spoke again, why there is an unofficial rule among California Highway Patrol officers to never, under any circumstances, take exit 78 after midnight. March 3rd, 2024, began like any other Tuesday night shift. I reported for duty at the Buttonwillow CHP office at 11 p.m., received my briefing, checked my equipment, and headed out onto State Route 58 eastbound. The night was clear, temperature around 52 degrees Fahrenheit, minimal traffic. Route 58 cuts through some of the most isolated stretches of Central California. Rolling hills covered in dead grass, oil derricks pumping in the darkness, and vast empty spaces where you can drive for 20 minutes without seeing another vehicle. I had been working this shift for 6 years. I knew every exit, every mile marker, every place where kids like to race, or where truckers pulled over to sleep. I knew where the deer crossed and where the drunk drivers from Bakersfield tended to lose control on the curves. I thought I knew this highway. I was wrong. At 1:47 a.m., I passed mile marker 104 heading east. My dashboard camera was recording, my radio was clear, my GPS showed my exact location. Everything was functioning normally. I was approximately 23 miles east of McKittrick, in an area where there is nothing but darkness and oil fields stretching to the horizon. The last vehicle I had seen was a semi-truck heading west about 15 minutes earlier. I was alone on the highway, which was not unusual for this time of night on a Tuesday. That is when I noticed the mile markers were wrong. I passed mile marker 103, then 102, counting down as they should. But then I passed another mile marker, and my headlights illuminated the number 104. I slowed down, thinking I had misread it. The next marker said 105. I was seeing mile markers counting up when they should have been counting down. I pulled over to the shoulder, put my vehicle in park, and sat there trying to make sense of what I had just seen. I checked my GPS. It showed me at mile marker 101, heading east. But I had just passed mile marker 105. I picked up my radio to call dispatch. Static. Pure white noise. I tried my cell phone. No signal. Not low signal. Not one bar. But the kind of no signal you get when your phone cannot even find a tower to connect to. I felt the first spike of real concern then. Not fear, not yet, but the recognition that something was wrong in a way I could not immediately explain. I am trained to stay calm, to methodically work through problems. So I shifted back into drive and continued east slowly, watching the mile markers. 106, 107, 108. I was driving east, and the numbers were counting up instead of down. I pulled over again, this time getting out of my vehicle with my flashlight. The air temperature had dropped. My breath made clouds in my flashlight beam, and my thermometer had read 52 degrees just minutes before. But now, the cold bit through my uniform jacket. I walked to the mile marker post and examined it closely. It was a standard California Department of Transportation mile marker. Green sign with white numbers, properly mounted. No signs of tampering or vandalism. It said 108. According to my GPS, which was now showing an error message I had never seen before, I should have been at mile marker 99. The GPS coordinates on my screen were flickering, numbers changing faster than I could read them, jumping between impossibly different locations, placing me in Bakersfield, then Santa Barbara, then coordinates that would put me somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. I returned to my vehicle and sat behind the wheel, forcing myself to think logically. Equipment malfunction. That had to be it. My GPS was malfunctioning. Maybe some kind of electromagnetic interference from the oil derricks. The mile markers were correct, and I was confused about direction. I decided to continue east until I reached the next town, Button Willow, where I could call in the equipment failure and get my bearings. I drove for what my dashboard clock said was 23 minutes. I should have covered about 20 miles at my speed. I passed mile markers 109, beat 110, beat 111, and kept going. I should have reached Button Willow by now. I should have seen the lights of the truck stops and gas stations. Instead, there was only darkness and highway and those mile markers counting up and up. When I passed mile marker 147, I stopped the vehicle again. Mile marker 147 would place me nearly to Santa Margarita, over 100 miles from where I had been. I'd been driving for less than half an hour. That was impossible. Not improbable, not strange, but actually impossible. And that is when I saw the headlights in my rearview mirror. A vehicle approaching from behind, the first I had seen since this began. I felt a wave of relief. Another person meant I could confirm what I was experiencing, get help, figure out what was happening. The vehicle slowed as it approached. It was another California Highway Patrol cruiser. I got out of my car and walked toward it, waving my flashlight. The other cruiser pulled alongside mine, and the driver's window rolled down. The trooper inside was wearing a CHP uniform, but it looked wrong somehow. The cut was slightly different, the badge placement not quite right. His face was young, maybe mid-20s, and he looked at me with an expression I could not read. Not confusion, not concern, but something else. Recognition? Maybe. Or resignation? He said my name, Trooper Sarah Diaz. I had not told him my name. My name tag was on my uniform, but he could not have read it in the dark from his vehicle. "How do you know my name?" I asked. He smiled, but it was a sad smile, the kind of smile someone gives when they are about to deliver bad news. Because you are supposed to be here, he said, at this time, on this night. It happens every 7 years. Welcome to the missing miles, Trooper Diaz. I am sorry you are here. Before I could respond, before I could ask him what he meant, his vehicle accelerated away, heading east, and within seconds, his taillights disappeared into the darkness. I stood on the shoulder of State Route 58, mile marker 147 behind me, and felt the cold seeping deeper into my bones. The temperature had dropped again. My breath made thick clouds now. I checked my vehicle's thermometer, and it showed 14 degrees Fahrenheit. That was impossible. It had been 52 degrees less than an hour ago. It never got that cold in this part of California in early March. I got back in my cruiser and cranked the heater to maximum. My radio was still producing nothing but static. My cell phone still had no signal. My GPS was now showing coordinates that placed me 400 miles north, somewhere in Oregon. I sat there trying to make sense of anything, trying to formulate a logical explanation for what was happening. That is when I noticed the date on my dashboard computer had changed. It no longer said March 3rd, 2024. It said March 3rd, 2017. Not possible. Not possible. Not possible. Equipment malfunction? All of it. GPS, radio, cell phone, dashboard computer, even the thermometer. Everything malfunctioning at once. That was the only explanation that made any sense. I started driving again. East, following the highway because that was all I could do. The mile markers continued counting up. 148, 149, 150. I drove and I watched those numbers and I tried to stay calm, tried to think like the trained law enforcement officer I was. And then I saw the people. They were standing alongside the highway, dozens of them, maybe more. They were not hitchhiking, not waving for help, just standing there in the darkness, facing the road. As my headlights swept over them, I saw they were wearing different kinds of clothing. Some in modern clothes, jeans and jackets, others in clothing that looked decades out of date. I slowed down, stopping near a group of 5 people standing together. I got out of my vehicle with my flashlight and my hand on my service weapon. "California Highway Patrol," I called out. "Is everyone all right? Do you need assistance?" They turned to look at me, all 5 of them moving in perfect unison, like they were controlled by the same brain. Their faces were pale in my flashlight beam, eyes reflecting the light strangely, and when they spoke with one voice. All of them saying the same words at exactly the same time. "We are the 147, they said. "We are the ones who stayed." I took a step back. "Who are you? What are you doing out here?" They smiled. All 5 of them, identical smiles that did not reach their eyes. "We are the ones who came to the missing miles and did not leave. We are the ones who understood. We are the infrastructure now. Time is not a line, Trooper Diaz. Time is a web, and this place is where the threads cross." I should have gotten back in my vehicle. I should have driven away. But I stood there, frozen, as more of them emerged from the darkness. Men and women, young and old, all dressed in clothing from different decades. I saw a woman in a dress that looked like it was from the 1950s. I saw a man in a CHP uniform with a badge style that had not been used since the 1970s. I saw teenagers in 1990s fashion and elderly people in clothes from even earlier. They all moved toward me slowly, not threatening, just approaching, and they all spoke in that same unified voice. "You are number 148, they said. "You are supposed to be here. It happens every 7 years. Someone new comes to the missing miles. Someone new joins us. I backed toward my vehicle, hand on my weapon but not drawing it, because what was I going to do? Shoot dozens of people who had not actually threatened me. "Stay back," I said, my voice shakier than I wanted it to be. "I do not know what this is, but you need to stay back." They stopped, all of them at once, like someone had hit a pause button. The woman in the 1950s dress stepped forward, separate from the group. When she spoke, her voice was her own, not that unified chorus. "You can leave if you want," she said. "You can drive back the way you came. The missing miles will let you go, but you will remember this. You will remember us, and in 7 years, you will be called back. Unless—" She paused, and in that pause, I heard something that made my blood freeze. My own voice, coming from the group behind her. Not similar to my voice, not someone who sounded like me, but my actual voice, my exact inflection and tone, saying words I had not spoken. "Unless you stay now and become part of the infrastructure, unless you choose to understand instead of fleeing, unless you stop time from being a line and accept that it is a web." I looked at the group and I saw her. I saw myself, standing among the others, wearing my own CHP uniform, my own face looking back at me with an expression of calm acceptance. Not possible. Not possible. Not possible. I ran to my vehicle, threw myself inside, and floored the accelerator. The engine roared, and the cruiser shot forward, heading east, racing past the standing figures. They did not move, did not try to stop me, just watched as I fled. I drove, and I did not look back, and the mile markers flashed by. 151, 152, 153, counting up and up. And I was crying now, not from fear exactly, but from the complete breakdown of everything I thought I understood about the world. At mile marker 173, the highway simply ended. Not construction, not a barrier, not a detour sign. The asphalt just stopped, giving way to dirt and scrub brush, as if this section of highway had never been built. But I was on State Route 58. This highway ran all the way across California. It could not just end. I stopped the vehicle and sat there, hands shaking on the wheel. My dashboard clock read 2:41 a.m. I had been in the missing miles, as that other trooper had called it, for 54 minutes. 54 minutes during which I had driven past impossible mile markers, seen people who spoke with one voice, seen myself standing among them. I needed to turn around. I needed to go back. But back to what? Back to mile marker 104, where this started? Back to those people? Back to my own doppelganger? I put the vehicle in reverse and began backing up slowly, watching the mile markers. They started counting down now. 173, 172, 171. Going backwards, they counted backwards. If I reversed direction, maybe I could reverse whatever was happening. At mile marker 147, I stopped. The people were gone. The shoulder of the highway was empty. I sat there in the silence, broken only by the static from my radio and the hum of my vehicle's heater. Then my radio crackled, and a voice came through, distorted and overlaid with static, but understandable. "Trooper Diaz, this is dispatch. Please respond." I grabbed the radio so hard my knuckles went white. "Dispatch, this is Trooper Diaz. I am on Route 58, and I am experiencing— I do not know what I am experiencing. My GPS is malfunctioning. My radio was out. I saw—" What could I say? What could I possibly say that would not get me sent for a psychological evaluation? "I am requesting immediate assistance at mile marker 147. Static for a long moment. Then the dispatcher's voice again, confused. Trooper Diaz, your GPS shows you at mile marker 99. Can you confirm your location? I looked at the mile marker. It said 147. Negative dispatch. I am at mile marker 147. I can see the marker. Another pause. Trooper Diaz, mile marker 147 would put you past Santa Margarita. That is over 100 miles from your last reported position. How did you... The radio dissolved into static again. I tried to respond, but got nothing. My cell phone suddenly had signal again. Not full signal, just one bar, but it was something. I called dispatch directly. The dispatcher who answered was different from the one on the radio, a man named Rodriguez, who I had known for years. "Sarah," he said, and I could hear the concern in his voice. "Where are you? Your GPS is all over the map. We have been trying to reach you for 40 minutes. "I am on Route 58, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need you to send someone to mile marker 147. I need backup. Something is wrong out here." "Sarah, listen to me very carefully," Rodriguez said, and his tone made me grip the phone tighter. "Do not get out of your vehicle. Do not approach anyone. Just drive west, back toward Button Willow. Do you understand? Drive west now." "Rodriguez, what is going on? What do you know about this?" He was quiet for a moment, and I could hear voices in the background, other people at dispatch talking urgently. When he spoke again, his voice was low. "There is a file, Sarah. A file that is not in the system, that is kept in the captain's office. It is about Route 58, about that section of highway. 7 other troopers have called in reports like yours. Michael Chen, in 2019, David Kowalski, in 2017, going back to 1982. All of them between mile 104 and mile 147. All of them on March 3rd, around 2 a.m. Just drive west, Sarah. Drive until you hit mile marker 104, then keep going. Do not stop. Do not look back. Just get out of there." The line went dead. My phone now showed no signal again. I started driving west. The mile markers counted down. 146, 145, 144. My hands were steady on the wheel now, steadier than they should have been. I was going into some kind of shock, I think, the part of my brain that handled trauma kicking in to keep me functional. I passed mile marker 130 and saw something ahead on the highway. Not the people again, not another impossible thing. Just a car, pulled over on the shoulder with its hazard lights flashing. Standard situation, someone broken down or in distress. I should have remembered Rodriguez's words. Should have just kept driving, but 14 years of training and instinct took over. I pulled up behind the vehicle and turned on my overhead lights. It was a Honda sedan, California plates, maybe 10 years old. I ran the plates through my computer, which was working again now, and they came back registered to a Michael Chen in Fresno. Michael Chen, the name from Rodriguez's warning. The trooper who had called in a report in 2019. I got out of my vehicle slowly, hand on my weapon, flashlight in the other hand. "California Highway Patrol," I called out. "Driver, please remain in your vehicle." The driver's door opened, and a man got out. He was young, maybe late 20s, Asian features, wearing civilian clothes. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, and when he saw me, he actually laughed. Not a happy laugh, a desperate one. "Thank God," he said. "Thank God you are here. I have been driving for hours and I cannot find my way out. The mile markers keep changing. My phone does not work. My GPS says I am in places I cannot be. Please, you have to help me." I kept my distance, kept my hand near my weapon. "Sir, what is your name?" "Michael Chen," he said, and my blood went cold. "I live in Fresno. I was driving home from Los Angeles, and I got on Route 58, and now I cannot get off. I keep driving, and nothing makes sense. What is happening? What is this place? Michael Chen, the trooper. But this was not a trooper. This was a civilian. And Rodriguez had said Michael Chen was a trooper in 2019. This was 2024. Sir, what is today's date? I asked. He stared at me like I was crazy. March 3rd, 2019. It is 3:15 in the morning. I have been stuck on this highway since midnight. Please, I need help. 2019. He thought it was 2019. My dashboard had said 2017 earlier. The missing miles did not just stretch space, they stretched time. Or maybe they did not stretch it. Maybe all times existed here at once, overlapping, bleeding together like paint on wet canvas. Mr. Chen, I said carefully, I need you to get back in your vehicle and follow me. Stay close. Do not fall behind. I am going to lead you out of here. He nodded frantically and got back in his car. I returned to my cruiser and started driving west again, checking my mirror to make sure he was following. Mile markers counting down. 129, 128, 127. We passed mile marker 120, and Michael Chen's Honda started flickering. Not the lights, not the vehicle itself, but the whole thing, like a TV signal cutting in and out. There one moment, gone the next, back again, each flicker lasting longer. By mile marker 115, his Honda was only visible half the time. By mile marker 110, it was gone entirely. I pulled over and looked back, but there was nothing on the highway behind me. Michael Chen had vanished. I thought about the people I had seen, the 147 they called themselves, how they moved in unison and spoke with one voice. I thought about the version of myself I had seen among them. Michael Chen had been stuck in the missing miles in 2019. It was now 2024. Where had he been for those 5 years? The answer came to me, and I did not want it to be true, but I knew it was. He had been here. In this place where time was not a line but a web, where all the moments existed simultaneously. He had been here for 5 years and would be here forever, unless he found a way out, or became like the others, became part of the infrastructure. I drove faster. Mile marker 105, 104, 103. At 104, I felt something shift, like passing through a membrane. Suddenly my radio was clear again. My GPS showed the correct location. My cell phone had full signal. Temperature was back to 54 degrees. Everything was normal. I had left the missing miles. I kept driving until I reached the Buttonwillow CHP office. It was 3:44 a.m., according to my dashboard clock. According to my watch, it was 4:17 a.m. According to the clock on the office wall, when I walked inside, it was 2:53 a.m. 3 different times. Rodriguez was there waiting for me, along with Captain Morris. They took me into a private room and asked me what happened. I told them everything. The mile markers, counting wrong, the people, Michael Chen, all of it. They did not look surprised. They did not look skeptical. They just listened and nodded. And when I finished, Captain Morris opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. A physical folder, not a digital file, old paper yellowed at the edges. This is not official, he said. This does not exist in any database. This is passed from captain to captain, kept out of the system, because if it went into the system, people would ask questions we cannot answer. I am showing you this because you have experienced it now. You are part of this, whether we want you to be or not. He opened the folder and spread the contents on the table. Reports, handwritten and typed, going back decades. 2019, Trooper Michael Chen reports temporal anomaly on Route 58. 2017, Trooper David Kowalski reports seeing impossible things on Route 58. 2010, Trooper Sandra Yates reports vehicle from 1950s appearing and disappearing. 2003, Trooper James Wu reports losing 4 hours during routine patrol. On and on, back to 1982, back to 1975, back to 1968. Every 7 years, on March 3rd, between midnight and 4 a.m., a California Highway Patrol officer would encounter the missing miles. Not always the same officer, not always the same mile markers, but always that date, always that time, always that section of highway. What is it? I asked. What causes this? Captain Morris looked at Rodriguez, then back at me. We do not know. The official position is equipment malfunction, atmospheric conditions, stress. The unofficial position is that there is something about that section of highway, that particular stretch of State Route 58, that does not work the way the rest of reality works. Time moves differently there. Space moves differently. And every 7 years, it reaches out and touches someone. Michael Chen, I said. What happened to him? The trooper, not the civilian version I saw. Rodriguez's face went dark. He disappeared in 2019, not on Route 58, not during the incident. 3 months later, he was driving home from his shift, and his car was found abandoned on the side of Route 58, right around mile marker 120. He was never found. No body, no evidence, no explanation. I thought about the Honda flickering in and out. Michael Chen's desperate face asking for help. He got pulled back, I said. The missing miles pulled him back. Captain Morris nodded. David Kowalski transferred to Oregon after his experience, but he came back in 2024, just last month, told us he had to, that he could feel it calling him. We put him on administrative leave, suggested he get help. He drove out to Route 58 2 weeks ago. We found his vehicle at mile marker 147. He is gone too. 3 months after the initial experience. That is how long they had. 3 months before the missing miles claimed them permanently. I looked at the date on my phone. March 3rd, 2024. 3 months from now would be June 3rd. I have 3 months, I said. Morris did not deny it. Some of them fought it, tried to stay away. It did not work. Some of them went willingly, thinking they could understand it, solve it, find those who disappeared. They never came back. Sarah, I am going to put you on leave. I am going to recommend psychological evaluation, not because I think you are crazy, but because that is what the paperwork requires. You are going to tell the psychiatrist that you experience stress-related hallucinations. You are going to take your leave, and you are going to stay the hell away from Route 58. I nodded, but we both knew it did not matter. The missing miles had touched me. I was number 148, they had said. I was supposed to be there. I went home that morning, and I did not sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, and I started researching. If 7 other troopers had experienced this, if it had been happening every 7 years going back decades, there had to be more to it. There had to be a reason, a pattern, some explanation. I started with Michael Chen. Public records showed he had been declared legally dead in 2021, 2 years after his disappearance. His family had held a memorial service. I found his wife on social media and sent her a message, telling her I was a fellow CHP officer looking into cold cases. She called me within an hour. You are asking about the missing miles, she said, and her voice was tired, like she had told this story too many times. I know about it. Michael told me about it after his first experience in 2019. He thought he was losing his mind. He saw a therapist, took medication, tried everything. But he said he could still feel it. He said it was like having a splinter in his mind. Something stuck there, that he could not remove. In June, 3 months later, he told me he had to go back. I begged him not to. We had a daughter, Sarah. She was only 3 years old. But he said if he did not go back, it would come for him anyway. He was trying to protect us by going on his own terms. Did he ever tell you what he learned about it? Did he research it like I am? He found things, she said. Historical things. Records from before Route 58 was built, from when it was just dirt roads and cattle trails. The Yokuts people, the indigenous tribe that lived in that area, they had stories about that stretch of land. They called it something in their language that Michael said translated roughly to the place where time pools. They avoided it. They built their villages around it, never through it. And there were stories from the Spanish colonial period too, about travelers disappearing in that area, about entire wagon trains vanishing. I wrote all of this down, my hand moving fast across the paper. Did he find anything else? Anything about how to stop it or escape it? She was quiet for a long time. He found a journal, she said finally. A physical journal that had been passed through the CHP for decades. It was not an official document, more like a log that troopers who experienced the missing miles had kept, adding their own entries. He read it, and he told me that the truth was worse than he thought. He said the missing miles were not just a place. They were alive. They were conscious. And they needed people. He did not explain what that meant before he left. He just kissed me and our daughter goodbye and drove to Route 58. That was the last time I saw him. Do you know where that journal is now? Captain Morris has it. It is in the folder with all the other unofficial documentation. Sarah, if you have experienced the missing miles, I am sorry. Michael fought it as hard as he could. He was a good man, and he did not deserve what happened. I hope you find a way out, that he could not. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen and felt the weight of what she had said. 3 months. I had 3 months before the missing miles would pull me back, and when they did, I would not be coming home. I could run, could try to leave California, put distance between myself and Route 58. But Kowalski had run to Oregon, and it had not saved him. The missing miles did not care about distance. Once they touched you, you were connected to them. I called Captain Morris and told him I needed to see the journal. He resisted at first, said it would not help, that reading it would only make things worse. But I pressed, and finally he agreed to meet me. We met at a coffee shop in Bakersfield, neutral ground, away from the CHP office and official channels. He brought a worn leather journal, pages yellowed and brittle, filled with handwriting from different people across different decades. This started in 1968, Morris said, sliding the journal across the table. Trooper Richard Hayes was the first one to document his experience in detail. Before that, there are scattered reports, incident files that mention strange occurrences, but nothing concrete. Hayes was different. He experienced the missing miles and became obsessed with understanding them. He spent months researching, documenting, adding to this journal. 3 months after his experience, he went back to Route 58 and disappeared. But he left the journal behind. The next trooper, who experienced the missing miles, found it in Hayes's desk and continued his work. It has been passed down that way ever since. I opened the journal and started reading. The first entry was dated June 8, 1968, written in precise, careful handwriting. My name is Trooper Richard Hayes. Badge 0847. On March 3rd, 1968, I encountered something on State Route 58 that I cannot explain through any known science or rational framework. I am writing this account because I believe I am going to die soon, and I want there to be a record of what I learned. I want someone to understand. Hayes described an experience almost identical to mine. Mile markers counting wrong, time distortions, seeing people who spoke in unison. He called them the collective. Noted that there were 133 of them when he encountered them in 1968. 133, not 147 like they had been when I saw them. The number had grown. Hayes had done extensive research. He had found references in Yokut's oral histories to the pooling place, a location where the spirit world and the physical world overlapped. The Yokuts believed that time did not flow linearly there, that all moments existed simultaneously, and that powerful spirits dwelled in that overlap. They had marked the boundaries with stones and warned their people never to enter after dark. When Spanish colonists arrived in the 1700s, they documented similar phenomena. In 1762, a group of missionaries traveling through the area reported seeing ghostly lights and figures from the past and future walking alongside each other. 3 of the missionaries disappeared. The Spanish marked it as cursed land and avoided it. In 1849, during the gold rush, a wagon train called the Donner Party, different group, the Markley Expedition. 23 people took a shortcut through that area and were never seen again. Their wagons were found abandoned months later, empty, with the supplies still inside, but the people gone. In 1917, construction began on the road that would eventually become State Route 58. The construction crew working on the section between present-day mile markers 100 and 150 reported numerous strange occurrences, tools that disappeared and reappeared in different locations, workers who claimed to see people from other time periods, time itself seeming to flow at different rates, with some workers aging faster than others. The project supervisor noted in his personal diary, which Hayes had found in a historical archive, that 3 crew members had vanished entirely, and that the rest refused to work that section after dark. The highway was completed in 1922, but the strange reports never stopped. Hayes documented vehicle accidents where drivers claimed to have seen impossible things, missing person cases where people disappeared without explanation, and every 7 years, a spike in reports, always on March 3rd, always between midnight and 4 a.m. I believe, Hayes wrote, that State Route 58 was built over a naturally occurring temporal anomaly. The Yokuts understood this and avoided it. The Spanish recognized the danger and marked it as cursed. But modern America, in its confidence and ignorance, paved over it and created a highway. The highway did not eliminate the anomaly. It channeled it, concentrated it, gave it a path to follow. And now, every 7 years, the anomaly reaches out and claims someone. The number grows. In 1915, according to records I found, there were 117 people in the collective. In 1943, there were 128. Now, in 1968, there are 133. They are building something. They are becoming something. And I believe that when I am pulled back, I will become number 134. The last entry in Hayes' section was dated June 20th in 1968, 2 days before he disappeared. I can feel it pulling me, like gravity, but not physical. It pulls at my mind, at my consciousness. I dream about the missing miles every night. I see the collective in my dreams, and they speak to me. They say I am already there, that I have always been there, that linear time is an illusion we create to make sense of infinity. They say that joining them is not death but awakening. They say they are the infrastructure that holds the pooling place together, that without them, the anomaly would expand, would consume more and more of the world. They sacrifice their individual existence to become part of a greater whole that maintains the barrier. I do not know if I believe them, but I know I cannot fight this pull anymore. Tomorrow, I will drive to Route 58. If you are reading this, if you have experienced the missing miles, I am sorry. You will feel the pull too. You have 3 months. Use them well. The next section was written by a different hand, dated September 1975. Trooper Janet Williams. Then March 1982. Trooper Robert Garcia. Each one describing the same experience, adding their own research, their own desperate attempts to understand. Each one disappearing exactly 3 months after their initial encounter. I flipped to the most recent entries. 2017. Trooper David Kowalski. His handwriting was shaky, desperate. I found something Hayes did not. I found classified documents from 1953, part of a military operation called Project Threshold. The U.S. Army knew about the anomaly. They knew about the missing miles. They conducted experiments there, trying to weaponize it, trying to understand if it could be used for time travel or interdimensional access. They sent in teams. None came back. The project was classified under the Atomic Energy Act, buried so deep that it officially does not exist. But I found references to it in declassified documents about other projects. They called the missing miles Site 17. They documented the collective, counted them, tried to communicate with them. The collective told them the same thing they told Hayes, that they are infrastructure, that they maintain the barrier, that without them, the anomaly would expand. The Army tried to destroy the anomaly in 1954. They used explosives, chemicals, even considered nuclear options. Nothing worked. The anomaly is not physical. It is not something that can be destroyed with force. It is a property of space-time itself in that location. The Army gave up in 1956 and classified everything, but they left behind monitoring stations, hidden sensors along Route 58 that still collect data. The government knows. The military knows. And they have decided that the best solution is to let the anomaly claim one person every 7 years, to let the collective grow, because the alternative is worse. The final entry was from 2019, Michael Chen. His handwriting was precise, methodical, like he was writing a police report. I have 3 days left before I will be pulled back. I have spent the last 3 months learning everything I could. I found the monitoring stations Kowalski mentioned. They are disguised as highway maintenance equipment, but they are recording temporal fluctuations, spatial distortions, radiation that does not match any known signature. The data is transmitted to a facility in Nevada. I tried to contact them. I was warned to stop investigating. Not threatened, but warned, in a way that made clear there were consequences if I continued. I am leaving this journal for whoever comes next. I am leaving it because I have learned something the others did not. I have learned that the collective is not just maintaining a barrier. They are trying to communicate something. In my dreams, in the visions I have had as the pull gets stronger, I have seen what they see. Time is not a line. Time is a web, and the missing miles are a knot in that web where all threads converge. The collective exists in all time simultaneously. They experience every moment at once, past and future, all possibilities and outcomes. To us, this seems like madness or death. To them, it is transcendence. They are not prisoners. They are guardians. They chose to become this. Not in the moment of their disappearance, but in a moment outside of time, in a place where choice and consequence collapse into a single point. I am beginning to understand that I chose this too. Before I was born, before time existed, in some space outside of linear causality. We all choose this. Every person in the collective chose it. Not because we want to die, but because we understand, in that moment outside of time, that someone must maintain the barriers. Someone must be the infrastructure, or reality itself will unravel. I am afraid. I do not want to leave my family. I do not want to stop existing as an individual. But I also feel a strange peace, because I know that what I am becoming is necessary. The missing miles will claim me. I will become number 147. And 7 years from now, someone else will experience what I experienced. They will find this journal. They will have 3 months. And they will make the same choice I am making, because it is the only choice that has ever existed. I closed the journal and sat there in the coffee shop, staring at Michael Chen's final words. Number 147. He knew. Somehow, he knew he would be 147, because he had already seen it. From outside of time, from the perspective of the collective, he had already experienced his disappearance and knew what number he would become. Captain Morris was watching me carefully. Now you understand why we do not put this in the system, he said. What could we possibly do with this information? Who would believe it? And even if they did, what would be the solution? Shut down Route 58. The anomaly existed before the highway. Shutting it down would not change anything. Try to destroy it like the Army did? We know how that ended. Let it expand? According to everything in that journal, the collective is holding it in check. Without them, it could consume more and more space. So we just sacrifice people to it? I said, my voice harder than I meant it to be. One trooper every 7 years. We just let them be taken? We do not have a choice, Sarah. The anomaly chooses who it touches. We cannot prevent it. We can only document it and hope that someday someone smarter than us will find a solution. I took the journal home and I read it cover to cover 3 more times. I made copies of every page, photographed every entry, backed everything up to encrypted drives. If I was going to disappear in 3 months, I wanted to leave behind as much information as possible. I wanted whoever came next, whoever would be number 149, to have everything I had learned. I continued my own research. I contacted historians who specialized in California indigenous peoples. I found a professor at UC Berkeley who had studied Yokit's oral traditions. His name was Dr. Thomas White Mountain, and he was Yokit's himself, descended from the same tribe that had avoided the pooling place. We met at his office, and I told him I was researching a location on Route 58 for historical purposes. I did not tell him about the missing miles, about the collective, about my experience. Not at first. But Dr. White Mountain was perceptive. He listened to my description of the location, and he went very quiet. You have been there, he said. It was not a question. You have been to Tuhuyut Ahi, the place where time pools. I can see it in your eyes. You have the mark? What mark? I asked. He pointed at my chest. The coldness. You carry it with you now. It is not something others can see, but I can. My grandfather had it. He went to the pooling place when he was young, against all warnings, because he was curious and foolish. He came back, but he was never the same. He said he could feel the pull for the rest of his life. He died when he was 47, and on the night he died, he walked out of his house and headed toward the pooling place. We found his body there in the morning. I lifted my shirt and looked at my chest. There was nothing visible, no mark or scar. But I knew what he meant. I could feel it, a coldness that had settled there since my experience, a sensation like ice water in my veins, spreading slowly. "Tell me about the pooling place," I said. "Tell me what your people knew." Dr. White Mountain opened a locked drawer in his desk and pulled out a leather-bound book, old and worn. "This is my grandfather's journal," he said. "He spent years trying to understand what he experienced. He studied our oral traditions, interviewed the few elders who would speak about it. Most would not. It is sacred knowledge, forbidden knowledge, dangerous knowledge. But he documented what he learned." He opened the journal and began to read. "The Yokuts say that when the world was created, there were thin places, locations where the barrier between the physical world and the spirit world was permeable. Most of these thin places closed over time as the world solidified, but some remained. Tuhuyut-Yi is one of the oldest remaining thin places. It is not just thin, it is damaged. Long ago, something tried to break through from the other side, from the realm of spirits, or from outside of time. The barrier held, but it was wounded. And through that wound, time leaks." "The collective," I said, "the people who go there and never come back. Your traditions mention them. The Yokuts call them the weavers. They are the ones who maintain the barrier, who hold the wound closed. Without them, the damage would expand, and time would leak into more and more places. Eventually, all of reality would be infected. The weavers are not prisoners. They are heroes. They sacrifice their individual existence to serve as the stitches that hold the wound closed. My people honored them. We would leave offerings at the boundary stones, food and water, and tools, though we knew the weavers did not need physical things anymore. We did it to honor their sacrifice. But the number keeps growing," I said. "Every 7 years, another person is taken. If they are stitches holding a wound closed, why does the wound need more stitches?" Dr. White Mountain looked sad. "Because the wound is growing. Slowly, over centuries, it expands. The weavers hold it in check, but they cannot heal it. They can only contain it. And as it grows, more weavers are needed. In my grandfather's time, there were fewer than 100. Now, there are many more. Someday, perhaps, there will be so many that the entire area will be full of weavers, and still the wound will grow." My grandfather believed that eventually the wound would expand beyond the weaver's ability to contain it. When that happens, time will unravel, not just in that location, but everywhere. All of history, all of the future, collapsing into a single eternal moment. I felt cold, colder than I had since leaving the missing miles. Is there any way to heal the wound, to close it permanently? The stories say there is one way, Dr. White Mountain said, but it requires a sacrifice so great that no one would willingly make it. The wound can only be healed by someone who exists in all times simultaneously, someone who can reach through the wound and repair it from both sides. To do this, they would need to give up not just their individual existence, but their entire timeline. They would be erased from history. They would never have been born. Every action they ever took, every person they touched, every consequence of their life would be undone. They would repair the wound and cease to have ever existed, and no one would remember them because there would be nothing to remember. That is impossible, I said. If someone never existed, how could they repair anything? It is a paradox, he agreed. But the spirit world does not follow the same logic as the physical world. In the space outside of time, where the weavers exist, such things are possible. My grandfather believed that someday, one of the weavers would make that choice. They would understand the full scope of what is at stake, and they would sacrifice not just their future, but their entire past to heal the wound. He called this person the last weaver. I left Dr. White Mountain's office with my mind reeling. The last weaver. Someone who would sacrifice not just their life, but their entire existence to heal the wound. I thought about the collective, about Michael Chen and David Kowalski and all the others who had been taken. Were they aware of this? Did they know that one of them would eventually need to make that final sacrifice? I drove home, and I did what I had been avoiding. I drove to Route 58. It was mid-afternoon, broad daylight, well outside the hours when the anomaly was active. I parked at mile marker 104, the place where my experience had begun, and I got out of my vehicle. The highway looked normal. Asphalt and painted lines, dead grass on the shoulders, oil derricks in the distance pumping away. Nothing unusual, nothing threatening, but I could feel it. That pull Michael Chen had described. Like gravity acting on my mind instead of my body. It was faint in daylight, barely noticeable, but it was there. The missing miles were waiting. I walked to mile marker 105, then 106. The sunlight felt thin here, like it was passing through something that filtered it. The temperature was normal, but I felt cold anyway, that ice water sensation in my chest spreading. At mile marker 107, I heard something. Not a sound exactly, more like a vibration, a frequency just below the range of hearing that I felt in my bones. I stood there and closed my eyes and let myself feel it fully, and I understood. The missing miles were not random. The anomaly was not mindless. It was reaching out deliberately, selecting people, calling them. It needed the weavers. It needed them to maintain the barrier, to hold the wound closed. And it chose people who would understand, who would eventually accept what needed to be done. People like Richard Hayes, who researched and documented. People like Michael Chen, who tried to protect their families. People like me, who would not stop seeking answers. We were not victims. We were chosen. I opened my eyes and spoke, out loud, not sure if anything could hear me, but needing to say it anyway. I understand what you are, I said. I understand what you need. But I will not go willingly. I will not accept this without fighting. You have taken enough people. The wound has to be healed, not just contained. The vibration increased, just for a moment, like something responding. Then it faded. I walked back to my vehicle and drove away. That night, I dreamed about the collective. I saw them all standing together in the darkness of the missing miles, 147 people, all watching me. Michael Chen was there, his CHP uniform crisp and clean. David Kowalski stood next to him. I saw Richard Hayes from 1968, Janet Williams from 1975, all the others whose names I had read in the journal. And I saw myself among them, number 148, standing in formation with the rest. In the dream, we spoke with one voice, all of us in unison. Time is not a line. Time is a web. We are the weavers. We maintain the barrier. We hold the wound closed. We sacrifice so others may live in linear time. This is not punishment. This is purpose. I woke up gasping, my chest burning cold. I looked at my calendar. April 15th. I had been experiencing the pull for 6 weeks. 6 weeks down, 6 weeks to go. I started documenting everything. I wrote my own entries in a separate journal, recording my research, my feelings, my understanding. I made videos explaining everything I had learned, encrypting them, and hiding them in multiple locations. I wrote letters to my family, to my friends, trying to explain without sounding insane. I did not know if anyone would believe me, but I needed them to know I had not chosen to disappear. I made arrangements, updated my will, made sure my affairs were in order. I did everything a person does when they know they are going to die. But I also did something else. I started researching temporal mechanics, quantum physics, anything that might give me insight into how the anomaly worked. I was not a scientist, but I could read papers, watch lectures, learn. I corresponded with physicists under false pretenses, asking theoretical questions about time and causality. One physicist at MIT, Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to Michael, told me something that made my blood run cold. Theoretically, she wrote in an email, if multiple timelines exist simultaneously, and if there is a location where these timelines intersect, you would need a stabilizing force. Something or someone to act as a fixed point, an anchor. Without that anchor, the intersection would expand chaotically, bleeding into more and more space-time. The anchor would need to exist in all timelines at once, experiencing all possible moments simultaneously. To an outside observer, this would look like multiple versions of the same person occupying the same space. To the person themselves, it would be incomprehensible. They would experience infinity in an instant and either go mad or transcend human consciousness entirely. The collective, the weavers, they were the anchors. 147 people existing in all timelines simultaneously, holding the intersection stable. May came and the pull got stronger. I could feel it every moment now, waking and sleeping. My dreams were all of the missing miles, of the collective, of standing in that darkness with all the others. I started seeing things during the day, flickers at the edge of my vision. The other version of myself, the one who had already joined the collective, appearing for a fraction of a second before vanishing. It was like looking at my own ghost, or my own future. I was living in multiple timelines at once now, bleeding between them. The doctors I saw thought I was having a breakdown. They prescribed medication, recommended hospitalization. I took the pills and lied about feeling better because I could not let them lock me up. I had too much work to do. I drove to Nevada, to the facility that received data from the monitoring stations along Route 58. It was hidden inside a larger government complex, unmarked and officially non-existent. I could not get inside, but I watched it from a distance, saw people coming and going, all of them in civilian clothes with no identifiable agency markings. Black budget operation, running off classified funds, studying the anomaly. I followed one of the employees to a coffee shop and struck up a conversation. I pretended to be a local, asked casual questions about what kind of work brought people to this area. She was cautious, but not hostile. After some small talk, I took a chance. I know you monitor Site 17, I said quietly. She went very still, looked around to make sure no one was close enough to hear. I do not know what you are talking about, she said carefully. Yes, you do. The temporal anomaly on Route 58. The monitoring stations disguised as maintenance equipment. Project Threshold. I know about all of it. I am not a threat. I am going to be taken by the anomaly in 5 weeks. I just want to know what you know. What have you learned from all that data? She should have walked away, should have reported me to security. But something in my face, maybe the desperation or the certainty, made her pause. Meet me tonight, she said finally. There is a rest stop, 15 miles south on Highway 95. Midnight. Come alone. I met her at midnight. She brought printouts, data sheets, graphs I could barely understand. My name is Dr. Lisa Mendez, she said. I am a temporal physicist. I have been working on the Site 17 project for 8 years. We monitor the anomaly, collect data, try to understand it. We are not trying to weaponize it or exploit it. We are trying to figure out how to contain it before it becomes uncontainable. The Weavers contain it, I said. The collective. They are the containment. Dr. Mendez nodded. We know. We have known since the 1950s. But we are running out of time. The growth rate is accelerating. In 1953, the anomaly affected a region approximately 40 miles in diameter. Now it is 52 miles. In another 50 years, it could be 100 miles. Eventually, if the growth continues, it could affect all of California, then all of North America, then the world. We have been trying to find another solution, but every model we run shows the same thing. The only way to permanently close the anomaly is to repair it from both sides, from inside linear time and from outside it. That requires someone who exists in both states simultaneously. The last weaver, I said. Dr. Mendez looked surprised. Where did you hear that term? From someone who knows more about this than your agency ever will. The indigenous people whose land you built a highway over, they know about the last weaver. They have known for centuries. One of the weavers will eventually sacrifice their entire timeline to heal the wound. They will cease to have ever existed. We have theorized the same thing, Dr. Mendez said quietly. Our models show that a complete repair would require a consciousness that can perceive and manipulate causality from outside of the timeline. The only way to achieve that is to be erased from the timeline entirely while simultaneously being present in all moments. It is a paradox, but in quantum mechanics, paradoxes can be resolved through superposition. The person would exist and not exist simultaneously, allowing them to act on the wound from both states. How do you choose who becomes the last weaver? I asked. You do not choose, she said. From what we understand, the anomaly itself chooses. It selects people who have the right psychological profile, the right capacity for understanding. It calls them, gives them time to learn, to prepare. And when they join the collective, they continue to learn and grow. Eventually, one of them will reach a state of understanding where they realize what needs to be done, and they will volunteer. Not from desperation or coercion, but from genuine comprehension of what is at stake and genuine acceptance of their role. And if no one volunteers? Dr. Mendez looked at the dark highway, at the distant lights of the facility. Then the wound keeps growing. More and more weavers are needed. Eventually, the number becomes unsustainable. Hundreds of people, thousands, all taken to hold the wound closed. And still, it would not be enough. The wound would expand beyond our ability to contain it. Time would unravel. All of history, all potential futures, collapsing into a single point. Existence would end. I felt that cold in my chest spreading, reaching toward my throat, my head. I am going to be taken in 5 weeks, I said. I am going to become number 148. Is there any chance I will be the last weaver? We do not know, Dr. Mendez said honestly. We cannot predict who it will be. But Sarah, if you are chosen, if you find yourself in that moment where you understand what is required, you have to make the choice for the right reasons. Not from fear, not from obligation, but from genuine comprehension. The last weaver will sacrifice everything they ever were and everything they ever will be. They will be forgotten by everyone who ever knew them. Their parents will not remember having a child. Their friends will not remember the times they shared. Every good thing they ever did will be erased. Every person they saved will have been saved by someone else or not saved at all. The timeline will rewrite itself around their absence. They will exist only in the moment of healing, and then not even that. Complete annihilation, complete selflessness, complete transcendence. I left that meeting with more knowledge and more fear than I had started with. 5 weeks until I would be taken. 5 weeks to prepare, to learn, to make peace with what was coming. I spent the time trying to find a different solution. I consulted with more physicists, more historians, more indigenous elders. Everyone told me the same thing. There was no other way. The wound had to be healed from both sides, and that required the last weaver. I made one final trip to see Dr. White Mountain. I told him everything I had learned, everything I had experienced. He listened without interruption, and when I finished, he looked at me with something like pity. "You are afraid of being forgotten," he said. It was not a question. "Yes," I admitted. "If I become the last weaver, if I erase myself from the timeline, what was the point of any of it? My life, my relationships, my work, all of it gone like it never happened. The point," he said gently, "is that you will have saved everything. Every person who ever lived, who ever will live, continuing to exist because you chose to stop existing. That is not meaningless. That is the definition of meaning. But no one will know," I said. "No one will remember. How can a sacrifice have meaning if no one remembers it?" Dr. White Mountain opened his grandfather's journal again and showed me a passage. My grandfather wrote this after his experience at the pooling place. "I have seen the weavers, and I have seen what they give up, but I have also seen what they become. They do not lose themselves. They expand themselves. They become part of the fabric of reality, woven into existence itself. Every moment that happens, every life that continues, is held together by their sacrifice. They are not forgotten. They are everywhere, in every second, in every breath, invisible but essential. They are the infrastructure of time itself. This is not death. This is immortality of a kind we cannot comprehend while bound to linear existence." I read the passage 3 times, trying to let it sink in. The weavers were not gone. They were everywhere, in every moment, holding reality together. Michael Chen was not dead. David Kowalski was not lost. They were present in every second, experiencing all of time simultaneously. Their individual consciousnesses merged into something vast and eternal. "If I become the last weaver," I said slowly, "I will exist in every moment, past and future, simultaneously. I will perceive all of time at once." "Yes," Dr. White Mountain said. "And in that state, you will be able to reach through the wound and heal it from both sides. You will stitch it closed, not with your body, but with your consciousness, weaving yourself into the fabric of reality as the final repair. And then, once it is healed, the timeline will rewrite itself. The wound will never have existed. The weavers will not be needed, and you will have never been born, because in a timeline without the wound, there was never a reason for you to exist. So I will heal it and then erase myself, I said. I will save everyone and then cease to have ever been. You will save everyone, he agreed. That is what matters. June 3rd came on a Tuesday, exactly 3 months after my initial experience. I woke up that morning knowing it was the day. The pull was overwhelming now, not a gentle tug, but a force like gravity pulling at my entire being. I could barely focus on anything else. I spent the morning writing final letters to people I loved. I tried to explain what was happening without sounding insane. I told my sister I loved her. I told my mother I was sorry. I wrote a letter to Michael Chen's widow and daughter, telling them that Michael was not suffering, that he had transcended into something beautiful and necessary. I did not know if any of it was true, but I needed them to have some comfort. At 11 p.m., I drove to Buttonwillow CHP office. Captain Morris was there, waiting. He did not ask me not to go. He knew it was pointless. "Sarah," he said, and his voice was rough. "You do not have to go alone. I can come with you. We can at least—" "No," I said. "You cannot come into the missing miles. Only those who are called can enter. If you try to follow, you will just end up lost on a normal stretch of highway, wondering where I went." "What do I tell your family?" I handed him a sealed envelope. "Give them this. Tell them I died in the line of duty. Tell them whatever story you need to tell. But do not let them think I abandoned them. I did not choose this." That was a lie. Or maybe it was not. Had I chosen this before I was born, in that space outside of time that Dr. White Mountain's grandfather described? Was I always meant to walk this path? I did not know anymore. At 11:47 p.m., I got in my cruiser and drove east on State Route 58. Captain Morris stood in the parking lot and watched me go, and I could see him in my rearview mirror until I rounded a curve and he disappeared. At mile marker 104, I felt it. The membrane. The boundary between normal reality and the missing miles. I took a deep breath and drove through. Immediately, everything changed. The temperature dropped to 14 degrees, my radio filled with static. My GPS showed impossible coordinates. The mile markers started counting wrong, up instead of down. 105, 106, 107. I was in the missing miles again, but this time I was not afraid. This time I knew what was happening. This time I was ready. At mile marker 147, they were waiting for me. The collective. All 147 of them, standing in formation along the shoulder of the highway. Michael Chen in his CHP uniform, David Kowalski next to him, Richard Hayes from 1968, Janet Williams from 1975, all the others whose names I had learned, and my own self, the version of me that had already joined them, standing in the front row. They spoke in unison, that harmonic voice that came from all of them at once. "Welcome, Trooper Sarah Diaz. Welcome, number 148. Welcome home." I got out of my vehicle and walked toward them. As I approached, they separated, creating a path through their formation. At the end of that path, I could see it. The wound. Not physical, not something I could point to or touch, but something I could perceive anyway. A tear in the fabric of reality, a place where time and space were damaged. Through that tear, I could see everything, every moment, every timeline, every possibility, all existing simultaneously. Past and future, all choices, all outcomes, collapsed into a single infinite point. It was beautiful and terrible. It was everything. I looked at the collective, at Michael Chen. You knew I was coming? I said. You have been waiting for me. Michael Chen stepped forward, separating himself from the collective. When he spoke, it was with his own voice, not the unified chorus. We knew, he said. From the moment we joined the collective, we could see all of time. We saw you coming. We saw what you will become. The last weaver, I said. I am the one who will heal the wound. You are one who could, he said carefully. The choice is still yours. You can join us now, become number 148, help us maintain the barrier. Or you can look deeper, understand more, and choose to become something greater. We cannot make that choice for you. No one can. But we can show you what it means. He reached out and took my hand. His skin was cold, colder than ice, but not painful. The moment we touched, I saw everything. I saw the wound from the outside and the inside simultaneously. I saw how it had formed thousands of years ago, when something vast and incomprehensible had brushed against reality and torn it. I saw the weavers through history, each one choosing to join the collective, each one helping to hold the wound closed. I saw the timeline extending forward, saw the wound growing despite their efforts, saw the future where it consumed everything. And I saw the alternative. I saw myself stepping through the wound, reaching into it with consciousness expanded to encompass all of time. I saw myself weaving my own existence into the tear, using my own timeline as thread to stitch it closed. I saw the wound healing, the tear sealing, reality becoming whole again. And I saw what came after, the timeline rewriting itself. In the new timeline, the wound had never existed. The missing miles had never existed. State Route 58 was just a normal highway. The weavers were not needed and had never been called. Michael Chen lived a full life with his family. David Kowalski never disappeared. Richard Hayes retired after a long career. And I was never born. In a timeline without the wound, my parents never met. Or they met, but did not have children. Or they had different children. The specifics did not matter. What mattered was that Sarah Diaz, badge number 2847, did not exist and had never existed. No one would remember me because there would be nothing to remember. Michael Chen released my hand, and I gasped. The vision fading, but not disappearing entirely. I could still feel it, that expanded perspective, that understanding of all time. That is what it means to be the last weaver, he said. You will save everything by becoming nothing. You will exist everywhere by existing nowhere. You will be remembered by no one and be essential to everyone. I looked at the wound again, at that tear in reality that had claimed so many lives, that threatened to claim infinitely more. I thought about Michael Chen's daughter growing up without a father, about David Kowalski's family wondering what happened, about all the others, 147 people whose lives had been interrupted by this wound. And I thought about the billions of people who would be affected if the wound continued to grow. My existence versus all of that. One person versus everything. It was not even a choice. Not really. I am ready, I said. The collective spoke in unison again. Are you certain? Once you step through, there is no returning. You will perceive all of time, all possibilities, and you will need to choose to become the last weaver from within that state. The knowing will be overwhelming. Many who see what you will see would choose to remain in the collective, to exist in infinity without taking the final step. You must choose to sacrifice not just your future, but your entire past, your entire existence. Can you do that? I thought about my sister, about my mother, about every person I had ever helped, every life I had touched. In the new timeline, they would be fine. They would have different memories, different experiences, but they would be fine. My sacrifice would not hurt them because they would never know I existed. I can, I said. I walked toward the wound. As I approached, the collective stepped aside, creating a wider path. They were honoring me, I realized, recognizing what I was about to do. At the edge of the wound, I paused and looked back one last time. I saw my cruiser with its lights still on. I saw the collective watching me. I saw myself among them, the version that would exist if I chose to join rather than transcend. And I saw something else. I saw Dr. White Mountain's grandfather standing at the back of the collective, though he had died decades ago. I saw Spanish missionaries from the 1700s. I saw Yokuts people from before European contact. The collective was not just recent weavers. It was everyone who had ever been touched by the wound, everyone who had ever chosen to help maintain the barrier. They were all here, in this space outside of time, all watching me take the final step. I stepped through the wound. The experience of stepping through was not movement. It was expansion. My consciousness exploded outward, touching every moment, every timeline, every possibility. I was born and I died simultaneously. I experienced every second of my life at once, and every second of every other timeline where I made different choices. I was Sarah Diaz, accepting the call of the missing miles, and I was Sarah Diaz ignoring it and living a normal life. I was Sarah Diaz dying in a car accident before ever encountering the anomaly, and I was Sarah Diaz living to old age with grandchildren I would never actually have. Every version, every outcome, every path, all at once. The human mind is not built for this. The human mind experiences time linearly, one moment after another, because that is the only way to stay sane. But now, I experienced everything simultaneously, and my consciousness should have shattered, should have been destroyed by the weight of infinity. Instead, it expanded. I grew. I became something more than human, something that could perceive and process all of time without breaking. I understood why the weavers spoke in unison. They were not individuals anymore. They were a collective consciousness, experiencing all moments together. Their individual thoughts merged into a single vast awareness. I could feel them now, all 147 of them, their minds touching mine. They welcomed me. They showed me how to exist in this state, how to perceive without drowning in perception. And they showed me the wound. From inside, from this perspective outside of linear time, I could see it completely. It was not a tear in space, but a tear in causality itself. Something from outside of time, something that existed in a dimension perpendicular to our own, had touched reality. Just touched it, maybe by accident, maybe with intention. But that brief contact had damaged the causal structure of our timeline. Time leaked through that damage, bleeding into itself, creating the pooling place where all moments converged. The weavers held it closed by existing in all moments simultaneously, by becoming human stitches in the fabric of causality. But it was not enough. The wound was growing, and no amount of weavers could stop that growth. They could only slow it. To actually heal it, to repair the damage rather than just containing it, required something different. It required someone to reach through the wound from both sides simultaneously, to exist in the timeline and outside of it, to weave causality back together, using their own existence as the thread. It required the last weaver. It required me. I reached out, not with hands, because I did not have hands anymore, but with my consciousness, with my being. I touched the edges of the wound, and I felt how damaged they were, how the fabric of causality was frayed and torn. I began to weave. I took the threads of my own timeline, every moment I had ever existed, and I wove them into the wound. My birth became part of the repair. My childhood memories, my first day at the academy, every call I had ever responded to, every person I had ever helped, all of it becoming part of the stitching. I wove my relationship with my sister, the fights and the laughter, into one edge of the wound. I wove my mother's love, steady and unconditional, into another edge. I wove every sunrise I had watched, every cup of coffee, every moment of joy and sadness and fear, weaving all of it into the damaged causality, using my existence to repair the tear. The weavers helped. All 147 of them. They added their support, their strength, holding the wound steady while I worked. Michael Chen was there, his timeline lending stability. David Kowalski, Richard Hayes, Janet Williams, all of them, supporting me as I performed the final repair. I wove and wove, pulling the edges of the wound together, stitching causality back into wholeness. And as I worked, I felt myself diminishing. Each thread of my timeline that I wove into the wound was a thread I no longer existed in. My birth becoming part of the repair meant I was no longer born. My childhood memories woven into the fabric meant no one remembered them. My career as a trooper, all of it, being used as stitching material, erasing itself as it repaired the damage. I understood now what it meant to be the last weaver. It was not a sacrifice in the traditional sense. It was a transformation, a transcendence. I was not dying. I was becoming part of the structure of reality itself. Every moment that would exist after the healing would contain a piece of me, invisible and essential. I would not be remembered because memory requires a past, and I was erasing my past to create a future. But I would be there, in the fabric of time, holding it together. The wound was almost healed. Just a few more threads, a few more pieces of my existence woven into the repair. I reached for my final moments, the memories of driving to Route 58 on June 3rd, 2024, of stepping through into the missing miles, of choosing to become the last weaver. These were the last threads. Once I wove these into the wound, the repair would be complete, and I would cease to have ever existed. I hesitated, not from fear, not from regret, but from a final moment of human doubt. Was this right? Was this necessary? Could there have been another way? The weavers spoke to me, their voices gentle and understanding. There is always doubt in the final moment, but you have seen the truth. You know what is at stake. This is not punishment. This is purpose. This is love made manifest. You are saving everything by becoming nothing. That is the highest form of existence. I thought about all the people who would live because of this choice. Michael Chen's daughter would have her father. David Kowalski would retire peacefully. The hundreds, thousands, millions who would have been affected as the wound grew would live their lives never knowing how close they came to non-existence. And I would be there in every moment, invisible and essential, not gone, transformed. I wove the final threads. I took my memories of the missing miles, my conversations with Dr. White Mountain and Dr. Mendez, my research, my understanding, all of it, and I wove it into the wound. The last stitch, the final repair. The wound closed, causality healed, reality became whole. And as the healing completed, I felt the timeline beginning to rewrite itself. Like watching a movie played in reverse, I saw events unfolding backwards, reshaping themselves without the wound. State Route 58 was always just a normal highway. The monitoring stations in Nevada never existed because there was nothing to monitor. Project Threshold never happened because there was no anomaly to study. The Yokuts never spoke of a pooling place because it never existed. Their oral traditions contained different stories, different warnings, different wisdom. Michael Chen met his wife, had his daughter, worked his career, never encountered anything strange. David Kowalski transferred to Oregon for normal career reasons, lived a normal life. Richard Hayes retired in the 1990s, remembered fondly by his colleagues. All 147 weavers, released from their duty, living the lives they would have lived. And my parents met differently, or did not meet. The timeline adjusted, reality finding the most stable configuration without my existence. My sister was an only child now, or had a different sibling, or the specifics blurred. I could not hold on to them because I was no longer part of the timeline. I existed in the moment of healing, experiencing it from outside of time, but I had no past and no future. No one would remember me, but I would remember them. In that final moment before complete transcendence, before I became purely part of the infrastructure, I held on to the memory of everyone I loved. My sister's laugh, my mother's strength, Michael Chen's dedication to his family, David Kowalski's courage, all of the weavers who had come before me. I held on to these memories not for myself, but as a gift, the last human thing I would do. And then even those memories faded, not disappearing, but transforming, becoming part of the fabric of healed reality. I was no longer Sarah Diaz. I was no longer anything that could be named or identified. I was the last weaver, spread across all of time, holding causality together, invisible and eternal. The wound was healed. Reality was whole. Everyone was saved. And I was everywhere and nowhere, everything and nothing, existing in every moment as the unremembered guardian of all that is. This is not death. This is not loss. This is transcendence. This is love. Time is not a line. Time is a web. And I am the weaver. If you are reading this, if somehow these words exist despite the timeline being rewritten, then something has preserved them. A fragment, an echo, a ghost in the machine. I do not know how this is possible. I should not exist to write this. No one should remember the missing miles, or the weavers, or the wound that was healed. But maybe, in the space between moments, in the quantum foam of reality, some information persists. Maybe this is my final gift, a warning and a promise. The wound was healed. You are safe. The missing miles do not exist in your timeline. State Route 58 is just a highway, nothing more. Drive it safely. Watch your speed. But know that reality is more fragile than you think. Know that there are those who sacrifice everything to keep it whole. You will never remember them, but they are there, in every breath you take, in every second that passes. The infrastructure is invisible but essential. The weavers are forgotten but eternal. And somewhere, in a space outside of time, in a moment that exists in no timeline, I watch over you, all of you, every person who lives because I chose not to. This is my duty. This is my purpose. This is my love. Thank you for listening. Thank you for reading. Thank you for existing. You are the reason the last weaver made their choice. You are worth everything. Remember this if you remember nothing else. In the places where time pools, where the boundaries between moments grow thin, there are guardians. They watch, they maintain, they protect, not for glory, not for recognition, but because it is necessary, because reality is precious, because every life matters. Drive safely, live fully. Know that you are loved by those who cannot be named. Time is not a line, time is a web, and you are held in its embrace, safe and precious, guarded by the forgotten, protected by the nameless, cherished by the eternal. This is my final message, my last words, my gift to you. The wound is healed, the barrier holds, reality is whole, and I am everywhere, in every moment, in every heartbeat, in every breath. Not gone, transcended, not forgotten, transformed, not lost, found. Welcome to the healed world. Welcome to the timeline that almost was not. Welcome to existence, purchased at the price of everything I was and everything I would have been. This is not goodbye. This is forever. I am the last weaver. I am the final stitch. I am the infrastructure of time itself. And I would make the same choice again, in every timeline, in every possibility, forever and always. Because you are worth it, all of you, every single one. Be safe out there. The highway is long, the night is dark, but the guardians watch, always, forever, until the end of time and beyond. This is Trooper Sarah Diaz, badge number 2847, California Highway Patrol. Signing off from a moment that never existed, in a timeline that was rewritten, speaking words that should not be possible. If you are reading this, know that someone loved you enough to cease existing so that you could continue. Know that reality is held together by sacrifice. Know that the nameless watch over the named. Know that the forgotten protect the remembered. And know that in the spaces between heartbeats, in the pauses between breaths, in the silence between thoughts, there are those who maintain the infrastructure of existence itself. Thank you. Thank you for being alive. Thank you for existing. Thank you for being worth everything. Time is not a line. Time is a web. And I am the weaver, forever.